Duran asks him if it's okay to use the object that the Archduke gave him if things go south. For a while Blaine keeps quiet and just looks at him. Finally, he asks Duran if he doesn't want to be acknowledged by him. He tells the boy that he's simply going to carry out the mission well and ensure that nothing goes wrong at all costs. Back in the present, Duran concludes to do as his master pleases. As he watches the fiery monsters come out, he decides that he'll become a ghost after the mission ends. He says he won't just become a ghost, but one that spreads fear and despair. Meanwhile, Russel goes to speak to Elder Spiegelman about his questions. Mr. Spiegelman confirms if he's asking about a dragon with multiple horns. He asks Russel why he's asking him this all of a sudden. Russel mentions that he saw a dragon while he was on the mission, and it caught his eye because it was unusual. Mr. Spiegelman tells him even he can't give a precise answer. Russel looks dejected and asks if that's so. Suddenly, Elder Spiegelman tells him that there's one entity that comes to mind. He informs Russel about something called the Divine Dragon King. Russel wonders what the Divine Dragon King is and wonders if there's such a thing in existence. Elder Spiegelman says that, however, due to the lack of historical records, very little is known about its achievements. He says that it's said to have raised those worthy to face some great evil. Russel remembers the image he saw of the black-haired warrior. Suddenly Pepper appears over his head, startling Russel. Elder Spiegelman sees Pepper and is surprised to see that Russel can summon spirits too. Pepper completely ignores them and just moves toward the door. He stands in front of the tent door and growls at something they can't see. Suddenly, something starts to push against the tent covering. It turns out to be the fiery beasts that the henchmen summoned. Russel and Elder Spiegelman are shocked to see the monster. The monster appears to have several boils on its body, and the boils release a great deal of explosion in the tent. Meanwhile, the Yellow Tower magicians outside scream out that they're being ambushed. The big knight advances towards them, and the magicians see him. They decide to join hands to subdue the enemy together. Oddly, the knight doesn't move an inch as they direct earth magic attacks at him. After they finish their attack, he scoffs and calls their skills pathetic. The magicians are shocked that he's still fine after they hit him with their attacks, and they look horrified. The big guy decides to return the favor by hitting them with his large hammer. He hits his hammer on the ground and shatters the ground under him. The hammer releases dark purple light that crawls along the earth and consumes the men, who scream in terror. Meanwhile, the masked guy also comes across a couple of Yellow Tower earth magicians. He simply stands with his hands behind his back as they try to attack him. The men join hands and fire earth arrows at him. The masked guy just sighs and says their magic is annoying, so he creates some magic portals. The portals absorb the earth arrows fired at him, and another portal appears behind the men. Suddenly, they notice the portal behind them. But it's too late because their arrows pass through the portal and hit them from the back. They scream in pain as they're killed by their own attacks. The masked guy walks past their corpses and into the camp. He stops for a moment and wonders where Old Man Spiegelman could be. Meanwhile, Russel protects himself and Elder Spiegelman from the impact of the explosion using a shield. Elder Spiegelman angrily asks who these insane people could be, who would dare to attack the excavation site of Endymion. Russel removes the shield, and he recognizes the monster as an undead. Russel informs Elder Spiegelman that those who use the dead as weapons can only be one thing. Elder Spiegelman asks if they're cultists, and Russel just apologizes and says him that he has to go protect someone important. As he leaves, he tells the Elder to meet up with him at the front of the ruins, which surprises Spiegelman. Elder Spiegelman watches Russel leave in confusion and wonders if the person is more important than him. Meanwhile, Princess Hecate fights against a monster that's closing in on her. She slashes at him with a magical axe and wonders where these things suddenly came from. The monster falls to the ground after she cuts its head clean off. The princess informs the other workers that everyone is safe and asks them to follow her. They rush to go meet her, but they meet someone on the track that makes them stop. Princess Hecate also spots the stranger and becomes alert. Right in front of them is the big knight that had killed several of them earlier. The princess leaps toward the knight and considers knocking him down with one strike. She jumps over him and hits him on the head using the mana-drenched weapon. As she lands on the ground, she expects him to fall down and die. The knight just looks at her, and the princess is shocked that he was able to survive that. The monster looks at her and asks her who she is, but she doesn't respond. She wishes she had a proper sword to fight because that would be helpful. The princess reasons that she can't lose her momentum here for the sake of the people in danger. She tells herself that she is Hecate Rathmos, the princess of the kingdom of Endymion, and she will protect her people. She suddenly releases a burst of mana and proceeds to face the monster. The big guy prepares to fight and says it looks like this fight is going to be interesting. Russel suddenly appears and tells the big guy that he'll make it more enjoyable. He appears in a flame of fire and hits the guy with a blaze lance attack in his chest. The attack throws the knight backward and sends him tumbling into a rock. Russel looks back at the princess and asks her if she's alright. He mistakenly calls her princess and then calls her supply member to keep her cover. The princess glares at him for making the mistake. and Russel cringes. From the smoke, the big guy says that this seems to be the famous warrior that uses the Spear of Flames. He gets back up and recognizes Russel as the Holy One of the Flame Tower. Russel turns back towards the big guy and tells the princess that he'll take care of this. He asks her to take the people to the ruins entrance because they have planned to regroup there with the Elder. Meanwhile, Elder Spiegelman gathers some of the workers and tries to get them to safety. Princess Hecate asks Russel if he's sure he can handle this alone. He turns back and reminds her that she said she would give him a chance to repay his debt. The princess smiles upon hearing that, so she gathers the people and informs him she'll leave it to him. The big guy announces to Russel that it would have been more fun if the two of them had fought him together, and Russel tells him not to worry because he's not fighting alone. The guy just stares at him and wonders what he's talking about. Suddenly, Pepper rushes at him with a blast of fire in his mouth. The resulting explosion is huge and it startles the big warrior. Russel uses the distraction to craft a weapon that combines overheat with his blaze lance and adds the explosive formula to it. The man emerges out of the fire and reminds Russel that his tricks won't work on him. He raises his dark purple hammer and attempts to respond with his own attack. Before he can act, Russel asks if he thinks this is just a trick, and he strikes the guy's hammer with his blaze lance. Another fiery explosion occurs, shocking the big warrior. An onslaught of fire covers the entire place. Meanwhile, some other workers try to escape to the ruins to meet Elder Spiegelman. On their way, they run into someone and have to stop. It turns out to be Jaren, who just stands there and stares at them. The men ask him if he's injured. They ask where he's been and inform him that enemies are attacking the site. Suddenly, all three men are decapitated with one swing of Jaran's sword. He cuts them all and watches their corpses fall to the ground. Immediately after, he looks near him and sees Elder Spiegelman gathering with the workers in front of the ruins. Jaran is shocked and wonders what their plan is. When he looks closer, he sees someone familiar among them and recognizes the person as Princess Hecate. Nearby, a great fiery explosion occurs. Jaran quickly turns around to see what's happening, and he sees the big warrior still standing after being hit with the explosion. Suddenly, the warrior sees something that shocks him. On the ground, pieces of his armor fall, and he's shocked that the cursed refined black iron got shattered. After pieces of the armor fall and reveal part of the man's face, Russel comments that they finally get to see his proud face. Russel asks why he has such a sour expression, and the man calls him an arrogant fool. He shouts at Russel and tells him not to underestimate him. Russel sees the purple streaks of color around the man's body, and is shocked that the man is able to use aura like a knight. Meanwhile, the guy realizes that he has to use the heart of a knight transplanted into him against Russel. The guy has two hearts in his chest, his original heart and the transplanted knight heart. The big warrior prepares his weapon and tells Russel that he'll cut him to shreds. As he jumps forward to hit Russel with his hammer, Russel jumps out of the way to avoid the hit. He's surprised that the big guy is able to move so fast. The big guy angrily turns toward him to pursue, but Russel just smiles. Russel recalls his fight with Spandam and reasons that Spandam is much faster than him, so there's nothing to worry about. Russel jumps at the big warrior and uses a special blaze lance construct called the Cutter. He runs past the warrior and cuts him by his side before he notices. The warrior raises his weapon to attack Russel, but he soon realizes he's been wounded. Russel stands behind him, ready to finish him off, and tells the man that it's time to end this. Before he can hit him, a portal appears between them. Out of the portal, water suddenly begins to gush out. The rush of water sweeps Russel away and knocks him backward. Russel manages to jump back to the ground, and he wonders what just happened. He looks at his clothing and notices it's drenched with water. When he looks forward, he sees the masked guy, and wonders if he's the one responsible for what just happened. The masked guy talks about how the pressure of the deep sea is quite useful, but the guy just tells him to shut up. Russel says he won't miss this time, and he prepares to attack again. He creates another blaze lance construct called the Cyclonic. As Russel rushes towards them with the Cyclonic attack, he reasons that it's impossible for them to dodge it. Suddenly, the masked guy gets an interesting idea and creates another portal between them. The portal leads to where Elder Spiegelman and the others are rallying in front of the ruins. Russel, who is rushing towards them, spots the portal, but it seems like it's too late for him to stop. The cyclone fires into the portal and appears on its other end. The workers in front of the ruins see the bright fire and wonder what's going on. Princess Hecate, who is also among them, looks up and wonders what's going on. Suddenly, a blast of fire comes out of the portal and heads for the people with Spiegelman. Elder Spiegelman and everyone else look up in horror as they see the blast of fire coming towards them. Russel is horrified by the turn of events and doesn't believe his eyes. He tells himself that this can't be happening. But it is. The blast tears through the portal and is directed at the spot where the men are gathering. The extent of the blast is so great that it results in an explosion. Moments after the large explosion hits the men, the smoke from the impact still remains. Russel arrives to check for survivors, and he's horrified by what has happened. He calls out to the princess and Elder Spiegelman but doesn't get a response. Suddenly, a hand emerges from the smoke, and the Elder signals to him. Russel finds Elder Spiegelman amidst some of the rubble. He rushes to him and asks if he's okay, but Elder Spiegelman asks about the others. Russel turns around and sees some corpses, and he tells the Elder that he's sorry. They suddenly hear a sound, and they both turn around to see who it is. They see Jiran carrying the unconscious princess towards them. Russel loudly calls out the princess's name, worried that something had happened to her. Elder Spiegelman is shocked to see that Princess Hecate is present on their sight. Russel finds out she's still alive, and he thanks God that she's safe. Russel thanks Jiran for rescuing the princess. Jiran smiles and stabs him. Russel looks down and sees Jiran's sword in his belly. He's horrified by the sight, and he starts to cough out blood. Elder Spiegelman is shocked by the turn of events, and he calls out to Russel. Pepper appears to attack Jiran, and Jiran is shocked since he didn't expect it. Before the dragon can attack him, the masked henchman creates a portal in front of them, and Pepper enters it. The masked guy says that Pepper has been bugging him for a while now, and he calls him an insect. Behind them, the henchmen appear through a portal. Russel starts to become drowsy when his body starts to lose strength, and he thinks about Pepper. Jiran turns to the masked guy and reminds him he told him to take Spiegelman hostage. The guy suggests that they could also take him as hostage since Alan doesn't know he's rebelled. Suddenly Mr. Spiegelman fires an attack at Jiran and asks him how he could dare betray them. The big warrior orders Spiegelman to shut up, and he smashes him into the ground using his weapon. Spiegelman passes out immediately under the weight of the hammer. The masked guy asks Jiran who the woman he's holding is, and Jiran informs him that she's Princess Hecate. He says having her is synonymous with controlling the Endymion kingdom. Jiran tells the guy that his foolish actions almost made the mission fail, and the guy retorts that it's all good as long as the princess isn't dead. While they're talking, Russel declares to them that he can't let that happen. They turn towards him, and he tells them that they're not going to get away. Meanwhile, he staggers to his feet and tries to stop the bleeding. The big guy informs the others that they'll take care of Russel, so he walks toward him with his hammer. Russel uses his cloudy ring and summons a mist to cover the area. The big guy reminds Russel that this is revenge for what he did to him earlier and attempts to hit him. Suddenly a mist covers the area, and the masked guy notices it. As the big guy is about to break Russel's head, he excitedly says it's time for him to die. Russel just looks at him and activates his draconification. The guy notices a sudden outburst of fire from Russel, but it's too late. A great outburst of fire envelopes the spot where Russel and the man are standing, and it looks like game over for the big guy. The masked guy notices the fire, and he wonders if the mist was supposed to block their vision. Moments later, Jiran and the masked guy hear the screams of the other henchmen through the mist. When they look closely, they see their corpses on the floor. The masked guy quickly creates several portals around himself, and he reasons that this must be why those who came before them were defeated. He senses a rapid increase in mana that goes beyond common sense. Through the mist, he sees a bright pair of eyes and wonders what on earth is going on. Suddenly, Russel appears under him and impales him with the blaze lance. The masked guy looks into Russel's dragon-like eyes, and he tells him that he's basically a monster as he begins to cough out blood. Russel ignores him and just discards his injured body to face his next opponent. Jiran drops the princess to join in the fight because he can't afford to leave any survivors, so the mission doesn't fail. He uses double casting and casts 2 bloody flame swords. With the swords in hand, he asks Russel to come at him. Russel spots him, but he realizes that his draconification timer is about to run out. He wields his blaze lance again and prepares for a fight. Jiran leaps toward him with a double attack, and Russel tells himself that he'll have to bet everything on one attack. Suddenly he fires a huge blast at Jiran, and a huge explosion occurs. Jiran falls to his knees. Russel continues to cough out blood due to the damage to his organs. Jiran looks at his chest and sees a large hole where his heart used to be. He soon collapses and dies. Russel hears a sound nearby and turns around. He sees the masked guy still standing and he looks healed of his injuries. The guy asks Russel that he hopes he didn't think that it was only the big guy who has 2 hearts and calls him a simpleton. The masked guy points to Jiran and says that they're the same. Russel stares in horror as he sees a sudden outburst of green light where Jiran fell. The masked guy mentions that Jiran is the possessor of power rivaling a dragon. Much to Russel's shock, Jiran transforms into a monster. The masked guy tells him that the monster is called Chimera's Heart. This must be from the object that the Archduke gave him. Jiran lands back on the ground, and Russel is shocked by the sight. He notices that the scale of his mana is so great that it's almost immeasurable. Jiran reaches out and uses his power to apprehend the masked guy. He chokes him and lifts him off the ground. Jiran asks him if he was hiding his powers on purpose just so that he'd use his heart. The guy laughs and says he knows he wanted to use it. The masked guy reminds him that he gets to jump a few circles thanks to the heart. He also reminds Jiran that he didn't pressure him into losing to Russel, so he can't be blamed. Jiran drops the guy to the ground. He tells him he's right, and that he has to deal with someone else first. Jiran reaches out, and he notifies Russel Raymond that he's going to put an end to him first. A phantom hand grabs Russel and pulls him closer. Jiran wraps his hand around Russel's throat and jokes that he left quite an impression just moments ago. He says that, in the end, he couldn't protect anything. He informs Russel that it's over, and he strikes the spatial disruption barrier with his newfound strength. The barrier is suddenly broken, exposing a small opening into the ruins. The masked guy is shocked to see that Jiran was able to create a rift in the spatial disruption, and reasons that Jiran must be enjoying himself. Russel tells Jiran that it's not over, and he fires an overheat attack at his face. The attack barely scratches Jiran, who just smiles and says that he's changed his mind. He throws Russel away and says that he'll grant him the death he deserves. Russel is thrown into the broken barrier, and he groans upon impact. Jiran informs him that he'll feel the pain of his soul being torn into pieces inside the rift of the barrier. The barrier slowly swallows Russel until it totally consumes him. Jiran tells him to die and curses incompetence for the rest of the remaining time he has. Russel screams as he is thrown into the barrier. He continues to scream until he wakes up in a hospital, where a nurse asks him if he can hear her. Russel jumps up, panting profusely, and he asks her where he is. The nurse informs him that he's at the Camelot Hospital. Russel is shocked to hear that he's at the hospital, and he asks her about the battle at the ruins. But the nurse says she doesn't understand what he's saying. He grabs her and asks her about the princess and the elder, but the woman seems startled. Another nurse walks up to him and asks him to calm down. The man notifies him that he was admitted here because he suddenly showed symptoms of a seizure while cleaning the Louvre Museum. Russel looks at him, bewildered, and he asks the man what he's talking about. Russel starts to shout out Pepper's name, and he asks where he is. The nurses suddenly subdue him because they think he's losing his mind. Russel wonders if he's really back to the time before he regressed. He remembers falling into the barrier, and he tells himself that he's sure it happened. Suddenly a doctor appears behind them and subdues Russel with a magical chain. The doctor asks him to calm down so they can discuss this somewhere else. Later, in the doctor's office, the doctor informs him that he fainted in the museum and showed extreme signs of hallucination. Russel says that he's never hallucinated, and the doctor tells him that she understands. She asks if he's heard about something called the nightmare tree, and Russel seems puzzled. She says it's a wicked tree that deludes people with the sweetest hallucinations and makes them starve under them, using their corpse as nutrition. Russel asks her what that has to do with him, so she informs him that apparently, the pollen of a nightmare tree exhibited in the museum that day leaked out. She says that many other people showed signs of hallucination apart from him. Russel is surprised, so she says that the good thing is that the museum will cover the entire treatment cost, and they'll also be offering a compensation amount. Russel wonders if all that happened to him was really a hallucination. The doctor hands him the written diagnosis to hand to the museum's representative to collect his compensation. The doctor comes up close and tells him that it's time to wake up from his dream. Russel still looks horrified, and he wonders if all of that was really a dream. He's certain that it's not possible because his experience with Master Daria was definitely not a dream. Later, Russel goes to Miss Daria's mansion. He assures himself that the realistic sensations cannot be a dream, but guards at the entrance order him to stop where he is. Russel informs them that he's here to see Miss Daria, and he assures himself that the master will recognize him. The guards turn to one another and ask themselves who he is. Russel prays that all that he has experienced is not a dream. He informs the men that his name is Russel Raymond and he was a disciple of Miss Daria. The guards are surprised to hear that, and one of them says he's never heard that name before. One of the guards says he's clearly a lunatic and orders the other guy to get him out of here. Russel gets angry, and he tries to run inside. He begs them to let him in for a while so he can see her just this once. One of the guards gets angry and pushes him to the ground. Suddenly a carriage carrying Miss Daria stops by, and Russel sees Miss Daria. The master asks what's going on, and the guard goes to bow to the master. He tells her that this guy keeps saying that he's her disciple. Miss Daria is surprised to hear that, so she turns to see the person. She looks at him for a while and doesn't seem to recognize him. After a short pause, she asks him if she knows him. Russel looks at her horrified. Russel stares at the master speechless, and she just stares back at him. After a short while, she tells the coach rider to keep moving, and Russel just remains in the rain. Later, Russel breaks into the Louvre Museum. He goes to where he saw the dragon heart, and he wonders if all that happened was really a hallucination from the nightmare tree's pollen. Out of anger, he punches the glass encasement of the dragon heart and says that this is crap. He prays that someone wakes him up if what's going on is a dream, because there's no way that him returning to his normal life is real. Suddenly, an alarm goes off in the museum, and the guards find Russel. The guards subdue him and demand to know who he is. The head guard tells the others to drag him out, but Russel keeps screaming that there's no way this is happening. After that time, Russel says he tries to prove that his life wasn't a dream. but all of it was useless. Eventually, a few years passed, and he tried desperately to resist the utterly incomprehensible reality. But the years slowly dulled him. Eventually, while sitting with other mercenaries, one guy passes him a newspaper. He reads it and sees Alan Page on the front cover, and the paper calls him the youngest Spear Tower Master. As he reads it, Russel reasons that there's no way someone like him could have been given a golden chance by a dragon god in the first place. Meanwhile, at the Walker Hill Academy, Russel does some menial cleaning job, and he reasons that he didn't expect to end up in this place. He recalls that he emptied his mind. He abandoned his ambition. And in the end, he abandoned himself. Russel thinks about it and says this life isn't half bad either. He reasons that it might in fact be the right job for the person he currently is. While he's cleaning, he hears some noise nearby and goes to investigate. He sees some bullies asking a kid named Spiegel what makes him think he can act the way he does, and reminding him to know his place. They tell him not to think they're on the same level. Russel continues cleaning, and he says that this has nothing to do with him, so he chooses to ignore them. The kid tells the bullies that no matter what they say, he's going to become a mage. The leader of the bullies scoffs, asking how someone who has mana vein narrowing can be so chatty. Russel overhears them and is shocked. The bully reminds the boy about the crimes his family committed, and he says that he's going to leave a mark on him that he'll never forget. As the bully is about to hurt Spiegel, Spiegel closes his eyes, and he hears a loud noise. When he finally opens his eyes, he sees the bullies passed out on the ground. Nearby, Russel continues cleaning the environment, and he asks why the spot he's cleaning is so dirty. Spiegel figures out that he was the one who helped him. Later on, Russel sits down on a bench to have his lunch. He notices Spiegel sitting next to him, and he asks him why he's following him around. Spiegel smiles at him and claims that he's just reading a book and the bench is a good place for him to focus. Russel notices something nearby, and the bullies who were spying on them hide in a corner. Our guy decides to speak with the little boy, and he asks him about his mana vein narrowing. He informs the kid that he knows someone like him who used to attend this academy, and Spiegel asks him what happened to him. Russel tells him that the boy was expelled because he couldn't overcome his limits. Like trash that's determined to be worthless. He says that for a mage, mana vein narrowing is no different from a death notice. Russel says that sometimes giving up is courage, but Spiegel promptly says he can't do that. Spiegel gets up to leave and says he can't give up. Russel watches him walk away and suddenly his boss calls him. Russel goes to meet the chief, and the man asks to be careful with the boy he's hanging out with. The chief mentions that he could get in trouble if things go wrong, and Russel says he doesn't understand what he means. The chief says that Spiegel is the son of the traitor that the Red Tower Master expelled, and Russel is shocked. This means that Spiegel is linked to the fallen family. Meanwhile, the pagans gather before the skeleton that Master Blaine was speaking with earlier. The skull announces that the world of the Guardians is coming to an end. It orders them to walk to the Walker Hill Academy and announce their return. Sometime later, Spiegel goes to a river to practice crystal magic. The amount of mana he releases is quite small, so he tries to release a little bit more. Instead of releasing more mana, the crystal breaks, and he strains his hand. Russel walks up to him and asks why he can't let go of the path of being a mage. Spiegel turns around, shocked, and Russel asks him once again why he doesn't give up. Spiegel tells him that he made a promise to his mother. Russel looks at him closely and doesn't say anything. Suddenly, they're ambushed by the bullies from the school. Spiegel's bullies carry some weapons and are glad to have found them. They say they were careless the last time but won't be careless today. Russel activates his aura and tells Spiegel to look carefully. He says this is the only way he can become a mage. Spiegel is shocked to see his aura and they get ready to fight. Russel directs his energy to his hands and hits them with a destructive attack. Sometime later, in the winter, Russel takes Spiegel out to train an overload and wizard body. Just as he learned from the scrolls, Russel tells him to run fast because his life directly depends on the distance from his enemy. This type of magic substitutes mana veins with a trained muscular body, unlike an adult with a completely developed body. Its effect will be maximized if a child in their growth years uses it. Later, Russel trains Spiegel in some martial arts, and he reasons that the speed of his progress is miserable. Russel asks him if this is all he's got when he made his mother a promise, and Spiegel tries to breathe properly. Spiegel gets back up and begs to train one more time. Later, in spring, Spiegel competes in the Academy's practical magic combat studies against his bully. The boy fires an ice arrow at his opponent and subdues him. The professor announces that Spiegel is the winner, and the audience is excited. One boy is shocked that a boy with mana vein narrowing won, and another person says the gap in skill was amazing. The bully curses them all and tells them to wait for his comeback. Spiegel looks happy and glances back at Russel. He reasons that, thanks to his new uncle, he's become a second circle. Russel looks at him from the shadows and smiles at his performance. Suddenly, someone calls out Russel's name, and he turns around to see the person. The man says it's been a long time and calls him an insect. Russell looks closer and realizes it's his own high school bully, Coma Frederick. Later, Russell is badly beaten up by Coma's guards and he struggles to breathe. The chief cleaner reminds him that he told him not to get mixed up with Spiegel. Coma informs Russell that because of him, his son was humiliated so many times. Russell smiles when he realizes the bully that Spiegel beat is Coma's son. He mentions that it's no wonder the boy did the same crap that he did. Coma crouches and notifies him that it seems he's not aware of the situation he's in. He informs him he can use his connections to get him thrown out of the academy, along with the kid he adores so much. Russell glares at him and suddenly begins to laugh, much to Coma's surprise. Our guy asks if he really thinks he adores the kid. He tells Coma he just provoked him because it was fun messing with him, and Coma doesn't know what to say. Later, Russell goes to pack his things. He recalls Coma ordering him to get out of the academy right now to prevent trouble. As he leaves, he thinks about Spiegel. Later that night, as Russell approaches the gate, Spiegel ambushes him and asks where he's going. Russell replies that he's leaving this place, but Spiegel asks him why. Our guy tightens his hand around his briefcase and proceeds to rush outside. Spiegel finds a way to get in front of him and tells him to stop right where he is. Spiegel sees Russell's face, and he's shocked. He asks him what happened to his face, and Russell asks him what he expected from someone like him. He asks Spiegel if he really thought he was his teacher. Russell walks past him and forces his way through. He tells Spiegel not to be delusional and walks away. The boy begins to cry. Meanwhile, Coma watches the entire thing from his coach parked nearby. He says this is the reason he loves money and power, because you can make anything go away with it. He decides to leave the academy, but his chariot suddenly stops. Coma sees some of the pagans in front of his chariot, and he asks how they dare block the way of the House of Frederick. The pagans release a huge green explosion that spreads through the area. Russell notices the explosion and turns back. When he returns to the academy, he sees it ablaze. He opens his mouth in surprise, wondering what has become of the academy. Meanwhile, the pagan leading the attack pronounces that this attack will announce the revival of their cult into the world. He orders the others to spread out and cause horror and despair everywhere. He orders them to create a sea of blood as they fight with the students. Meanwhile, another cultist who uses demonic claw power fights with some other students. Meanwhile, Spiegel fires an ice arrow at one of the pagans and pins the person to a wall. The man using the demonic claw spots him and starts to cackle. He faces him to fight, and she laughs that one small fly is still alive. Eventually, Russell arrives, but he hides near a wall to watch the fight. He sees the carnage, and he spots Spiegel on his knees after the man has dealt with him. The man casts another demonic claw to finish him, and he mentions that he's amusing. Russell keeps watching and wonders why Spiegel isn't running away. The man asks Spiegel if he's scared of death, and he tells her that he bought enough time for others to run away, so he's satisfied. Russell says to himself that he can feel the man's tremendous magical power. The man is so powerful that the professors couldn't handle him. He remembers that he was only able to fight such a person after he had become a guardian. He thinks about his life now and about how powerless he is, so he wonders what he can do. Russell turns around and says that he has to run away because there's no reason to sacrifice himself. The man calls Spiegel a weak-ass punk and orders him to know his place. Spiegel laughs and informs him that he knows better than anyone that he can't win. But he says that protecting people is the Guardian's calling. Russell remembers saying that same thing, and he stops in his tracks. The man tells Spiegel that his naive thinking is going to get him killed, and proceeds to take the boy out. Before he can hit Spiegel, Russell stabs the man with a sword. The man retaliates and strikes Russell with a demonic claw attack. The man calls him an insect and asks him how he could dare attack him. Spiegel takes advantage of the distraction and uses a third circle magic ice bolt. He fires the bolt at the man and pins him to the wall. Russell quickly picks up a nearby spear and rushes toward the guy to impale him to the wall. Our guy rushes towards the man and stabs him in the neck. After he stabs him, he crouches down, tired from all the blood loss after the man cut him in his torso. Spiegel rushes to Russell's side and notices the cut. He tries to stop the bleeding, but he realizes the blood won't stop. Russell tells him to quickly leave because others will soon come this way. Spiegel says that he can't go alone, but Russell puts his hand on his shoulder. He asks Spiegel if he's going to turn him into a teacher who can't even protect one of his disciples. Spiegel is shocked to hear Russell call him his disciple, and Russell asks him to go and make it out alive so he can become a guardian. Our guy smiles at him and mentions that it won't hurt to keep one more promise. Spiegel starts to cry, and he tells Russell that he promises to become a guardian and calls him master. After Spiegel runs, Russell thinks about how Spiegel is just like his lost dream, like the courage that he abandoned, and that was why he hated him. Later, some of the other pagans come in that direction, and Russell tells them to stop. Russell reminds himself that that was the same reason he also liked Spiegel. The pagan calls Russell trash and says that even Circle 2 magic would be a waste to use on him. Russell smiles, and he says to Spiegel in his mind that, thanks to him, he was able to live. Russel leaps towards the two men, and he decides to use magic that can be learned with a principle that doesn't regard the level of one's circle. He uses blink and appears in front of the guy with his spear. The pagan cultist is startled, and Russel pushes his spear into him. The guy quickly responds with a blast of energy. A huge blast ensues, and Russel speaks within himself that Spiegel has to make it out alive.